I'm Lynn Boyer, and you're listening to Community Catalysts, a podcast that supports each other through shared experience. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Community Catalyst podcast. I'm Lynn Boyer, your host. I'm the Executive Director of Community Impact here at the Y, and I'm so pleased to have with me today my friend Justin. He is from the Merrimack Police Department, but today we're going to talk about a very special program called ACERT. And I'm really happy to have him on here to explain this program because it's one of my favorite partnerships that we have here at the Y and has a lot of impact on those in our community, specifically in Merrimack. So Justin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, Lynn. Thanks for having me. My name is Justin Agraz. I work for Merrimack PD as a police officer. I've been with Merrimack since about 2019, and I've been in this role running a couple different programs, one of them being the ACERT program and the other being the PET program. We started them both around midway through 2022, so I've been in this role for a few years now.
Great. Thank you and welcome. So we'll talk about both programs, but if you can first explain to us what ACERT is, so what the acronym actually stands for, and kind of walk us through the program.
Sure. So ACERT stands for Adverse Childhood Experience Reaction Team. Essentially what is going on is there was this really interesting study that was done in the late 80s, early 90s around ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences, essentially trauma, and what happens with kids when they go through this trauma. Are they resilient? Do kids just bounce back? Can it have long-term effects? And if so, what do those long-term effects look like? The study found some really, really interesting stuff that, what kids go through affects mental health, not only as a child, but as an adult. It can affect physical health, leading to things like cancer and brittle bones and COPD and a whole bunch of other stuff. It also affects employment rates and employment success rates, all that stuff tied into when kids go through these trauma. So what they found in this study was that, it's not all bad stuff. When kids go through these ACEs, if they get connected with positive resources that help them to not only have something positive, but also process and cope with the ACE that they went through, in essence, it's like a seesaw where it kind of balances out. So with the ACERT program, what we're doing is I teamed up with a whole bunch of different partners in the area, not all in Merrimack. Some are in Nashua, some in Manchester, Goffstown, and we created a resource network essentially. And what I do is work to connect families that have children that are potentially going through those ACEs with these long-term supports.
Yeah, that's really great. And it's such an impactful program. So tell us a little bit about the process, because obviously I know the process and I see the referrals all the time. But once you go in and you visit with the families, what happens then?
Yeah, so the process is kind of designed by Amoskeag Health. They own the trademark, the copyright to ACERT, and they kind of design what they want to look like. We've ventured a little bit from it, and to be honest, Amoskeag seems to be getting on board with what we're doing. So the way that it's designed to work, if you go by the letter of their program, is that anytime a family ends up in a police report, right, they have some involvement with Merrimack PD. Our patrol officers that are on scene with that family would try to determine, are there kids that could be affected by this call, or are there kids that were affected by this call? If they determine either of those to be the case, then they look at, well, does this call qualify as a potential ACE? And if it does, then they send that report to me. I review all the reports, and if I say, yes, this meets the qualification for ACERT, then I reach out to the family, to either mom or dad or whoever the guardian is, talk to them about the program, kind of give them a little bit of the rundown on it. And then I try to bring them in for an initial meeting. During the initial meeting, we take about half an hour or so, and we kind of explain the in-depth, what is ACERT, what was that study behind it that I mentioned a little bit earlier, what's the goal of the program, what is it, what isn't it. And if they choose to move forward, then we set up a follow-up meeting where, depending on the age of the kids, they actually bring the kids into the meeting. What I find is that middle school and older, if they don't think it's their idea or if they're not interested in something, you're not going to get them to buy into it, right? You might be able to force them to go to something, but that buy-in's not there. So I like to explain all these resources to the kids when they're at that age. But I leave that entirely up to the family. Parents make that choice. I've had young children in the second meeting with me, and I've had older kids that don't come, and that's fine either way. But essentially, what we do in that second meeting is we go through. It's about 14 different agencies that we're partnered with that range from mental health programs to mentoring programs and after school supports and tutoring programs and gyms and sports programs, just kind of a wide array, kind of something for everybody. And we go through them. And then what's beautiful about this program is that after we go through them, the parents will work with their child if they're present in the meeting to determine what's right for them. If you have multiple kids, you're checking multiple programs for each child. It's not one setup for the whole family. And whatever they choose to get connected with, the beauty of it is I don't just leave them with a phone number to call and saying, hey, here's the information on the program, good luck. I have contact points in all of these programs. And myself, and I work with a couple advocates, one from Greater Nashua Mental Health and one from Boys and Girls Club. We will contact the partner that you're looking to get connected with for you. Have the conversation of, hey, this family is looking to connect with your program. Here's what they're looking for services. Here's the age of the kids, and we provide the contact information for the family. And then that partner program calls the family. So the goal of it is, instead of just giving you a list of resources, we're bringing the resources into your home to make that connection rate higher, right? Because we know that if I just gave our officers a list of resources and said, hey, anytime you have a potential ACE, hand this flyer to the family and they can go through and call it, the likelihood of following up and connecting with those resources is very slim. So this creates a much higher connection rate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say as a partner in this initiative, um, we've all been very much involved in a lot of the decision making. We've met a few times since launching it and asked for our feedback, which I really appreciate. So then we get the referral forms from your contacts, like you said, and also I really love that we get kind of a backstory as well, because it can be hard sometimes to reach out to someone blind, like, oh, you heard about the why? What do you want to know? I mean, there's a million things that we do. So I really like that there's often this is what the family's looking for, whether it be childcare or a financial assistance program, or I've even gotten, content about, oh, they want an art class or a dance class. And it's just really helpful because I can imagine that this is probably very overwhelming for the family. So not only are you making it easier by the contacts from the organizations reaching out to them, but not overwhelming them with every single thing that we offer. We can kind of target it and fine tune it a little bit more for them. So, yeah, we've had a great return rate here. I'm the point of contact here at the Y, and when I reach out to families, they're usually very thankful for us reaching out to them, as well as we've had many enroll in our programs and take advantage of that. So it's really a great program, and I'm really glad that we are a part of it. Um, so before the call, you were saying that your other program, the PET program, so it sounds like these two are somewhat connected or one stem from the other. So can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so they are connected. So the other part of my job is what's called a PET program. That stands for Prevention, Enforcement, and Treatment. So essentially, what I do in that role is I work with anybody Merrimack PD comes in contact with that's dealing with an addiction disorder. Um, so it doesn't matter if it's an arrest type situation or if it's just maybe it's a medical call, or maybe somebody comes into the PD looking for resources for a family member. I try to connect with that individual that's experiencing addiction and work with them to create some stability in their life, and then try to bring that eventually goal of moving towards recovery. I try to make be cognizant of the fact that recovery looks different for everybody. And what I view as recovery might not be what that individual views as recovery. So we kind of figure that out together. And then, when they get to a point, if they get to the point that they want, real recovery services, maybe an IOP patient or maybe an IOP program or maybe a inpatient program, I work with them to find what type of program they might be best successful with.
Mhm.
And then I do the same thing I do with the pet programs, where I actually contact that program for them and create that warm handoff. So working kind of hand in hand in order to get them towards that recovery. The catch and release that I like to call it, that law enforcement has done for years when it comes to substances, it just hasn't got anybody anywhere. Substances are still in the street. People are still battling addiction, and we need to look at it in a different light. So that's kind of what I'm doing. The way that these two programs tie in together is in that preventative side.
Mm-hmm.
So on the preventative side, I do a lot of educational stuff. So I try to stay up on the latest trends to educate our officers. I run trainings for the public. We're running one tomorrow night at the high school for parents that are parents of high school and middle-aged school kids, called the mock teen bedroom, where you kind of learn what type of stuff you need to be aware of in a teenager's bedroom or a car. I run trainings for people that are actively in addiction, right? What's out there that you need to be aware of? What are the new drug trends, and what do they look like in overdose, and how do you stay safe? And then as part of that, when we look at the preventative side, we started looking at, well, what causes addiction, right? And how do people wind up in active addiction? And one of the common ties in is that addiction is very often, almost always, co-occurring with mental health struggles. And listen, I'd love to, but I can't fix every adult's mental health struggles that are out there right now. We know it's an epidemic, and we know that it's a very large problem that is going to take a full community buy-in to even put a dent in it. But when we look at adult mental health struggles, well, that's where that ACEs study came in, because we started looking at what causes the adult mental health struggles. And when we did that, we found this ACEs study, and we said, wow, okay, so when kids are going through this trauma, the ACEs, the adverse experiences, that leads to such a high likelihood of them having mental health struggles as an adult, which then can correlate to that addiction side of stuff. So it's one big package. With the ACERT program, we're trying to stop addiction before it ever becomes a thing. Yeah. And with the PET program, we're trying to help somebody out of addiction when they're actively in it.
Yeah, both preventative, being proactive and reactive. I love that. It's, from all sides. Do you have, so besides the data about, what ACEs can lead to, do you have data for Merrimack specifically, how both of these programs have had an impact on the community?
Yeah, so we are tracking the amount of families that we assist. We're starting to look into the repeat households, the households that we're called to regular. I'm starting to look into and track when those households end up in one of the programs. Do we see a reduction there? Preliminary, I can say we are definitely seeing a reduction. A lot of the individuals that work with me in the PET program, especially, are people that we may come in contact with fairly regularly, and not always for the best things. And when they work with me, if they buy into the program, and not everybody does, some people hear about it, talk to me for a couple of days, and then fade off, and that's okay. It's voluntary. But when they buy into the program, we do have a pretty good success rate of moving them into recovery and reducing the call volume, so to speak, for patrol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Great. And then is there any one thing that you would like people to know, if they could take away one thing about either program or both programs or the work that you do, what would it be?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit before we started here, but stigma is a big one, right? So, and stigma goes two ways. Okay, so when we think about the PET program, right, working with people in addiction, a lot of people that are battling addiction feel that stigma, and they have a hard time looking for help, asking for help, acknowledging I need help, right? And that's something that we all have to get better at, at a community level, but especially at the police level, right? Because, we often deal with the criminality associated with a lot of addiction. And so a lot of cops kind of view it one way. And that's something that I'm working to change, to kind of say, listen, these are people, they have a medical disorder and we need to help them. And at the same time, people that are in active addiction, especially if it's to an illegal substance like an opioid or something, they haven't always had good interactions with police. And so they have stigma towards me of, well, I'm not working with a cop, right? You're going to try to arrest me. And in my job, I don't do that. I don't do investigations. I don't make arrests. I work to move them towards recovery. So that stigma has to get broken down on both sides. And that can be kind of a barrier sometimes to getting a lot of people to help that they want and need, because sometimes they don't feel comfortable working with me. So it kind of goes both ways. And the other part of it is with that ACERT program. I've had a couple, not many, but I've had a couple families that I've reached out to over the time we've been doing that have actually said to me, wow, this is a great program, but I don't want to do it. And when I say, why don't you want to do it? Like, what's the reason behind it? They say, well, if I enter my kids into this program, they're going to be labeled. And, I don't think that's the case because of how discreet we are with all personal information. But, that's a concern, right? So what I try to teach people is like, just because you're involved in this program, all it means is that your kids could use some extra help, right? It's not a bad thing, right? There is no manual for parents as your kids get older. We're all just doing the best we can. And sometimes kids go through stuff. It might not be in the household. It might be out, getting bullied at school, right? And they just need something extra, something positive, and to help them cope with that. And we as parents, we don't have all the answers. So sometimes acknowledging that and saying, hey, you know what, it's okay to lean on somebody else for a little bit of help, or to help me navigate and find out what programs are out there. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think even if they don't decide to enroll at that moment, they still have that list of those partners, right? And they
Exactly.
know that we're here and that we're here for them and we're in the community. So, well, I think the work you do is absolutely fantastic. I am so proud that we are part of the ACERT program, and that we can serve as a resource for people through that effort. It's really one of my absolute favorite partnerships that we have. Not that I'm biased or anything, but it
Well,
really is. I love
The
it.
Y has been an excellent program, and I know you guys are very highly requested. And in all fairness, you guys are one of the only partners that we have that's actually here in Merrimack. So you guys are very accessible for families, which has been really beneficial.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for joining us today. And to our audience, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
You can download Community Catalyst on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Castbox, and Spotify.